how to start animating a tutorial. First, you're going to open Clip Studio Paint. This is Clip Studio Paint X. That's the one you can animate in. Open a new file. Go to the animation tab. Set this stuff. You want the resolution to be high, or else it looks a little grainy. Your frame rate should be 24 or 12. Okay, 12 is when you animate on twos. Playback time, you could leave that at the 120. We'll change it afterwards. I have it set to 12 though. All this other stuff doesn't matter. Press OK. As you see, I already did that over here. You're going to have create a new animation folder, and you're gonna start pressing new animation cell. The cells are what are included in the actual animation. If you just click here and press new layer, it will not be a part of your animation automatically. Okay, to enable your timeline, press window and make sure timeline is clicked. Okay, to actually start animating, here are some tips. First, you're probably going to want to start with your first frame, and then you're going to want to cut over to your very last frame. These are keyframes. When you have movement, you want to have two keyframes that define what the movement is. In my case, he goes from kind of leaning forward and being still to leaning back and doing finger guns. Okay? Then you're going to want to have a transition frame. The transition frame goes in between your keyframes. So as you can see, he transitions from being here to being kind of in the middle to being over here. You could also see that his tail is moving from the left to the right. Then you're going to want to start adding your tweens. I'm going to enable onion skin so you could really see what the tweens are doing. Your tweens are frames that are similar to your existing frames, and they smoothen out your animation. You'll notice that I have more frames on one side than on the other. The reason is the animation properties that we learn with the ball bounce. Okay, if we look at a bouncing ball animation like this, we can see that there are an even amount of frames evenly spaced along the trajectory of the ball. Instead, some frames get grouped together and others are further apart. We're doing the same thing with our movement, except that instead of a ball, we have a character. These two frames are very similar to each other. The character doesn't move much. These are two frames that are next to each other in our bouncing ball. The next frame is our in-between frame. This is kind of like this part of the bouncing ball with a lot of space between it and the other frames. Then we move all the way to the other side, and these three frames are all very close to each other. This is the arc of the bouncing ball with these three frames all next to each other. So, using these bouncing ball properties, we can make our character feel smooth. You'll notice that these two frames, this one, and also these two frames, this one and this one, are both very similar to each other, and it kind of looks like the character is just wiggling up and down. The reason for these frames is these are adding a bounce. The bounce property shows a tension before our final resting action. So here, our character dips down in anticipation before he begins moving across the screen. Here, our character lifts up before settling into his final pose. This creates a smooth animation that flows like this. Now, to refine this, we go ahead and add some line art. I'm going to turn off the onion skin so you can see it a little bit better. Our line art adds a little bit more detail. You can see there's a little bit more fur detailing happening in the line art, and also just makes everything look a little bit cleaner. I kept a very simple style for this one, just for the sake of getting it done. Then we have to get into color. Color can be a little bit tricky. As you can see, sometimes when you add the color to an animation, it adds new areas that you'll then have to animate. In my case, the squirrel tail has stripes, so I had to animate the stripes to make them look like they were flowing with the tail from one side to the other. There's also areas that need to stay consistent. Consistency is very important in animation. It helps make everything feel grounded. Certain things, like the collar of the shirt, his nose, the size of his ears, the size of our character in relation to the frame. All of these things we want to keep relatively consistent. Uh, that helps the animation feel natural and quote unquote real and grounded in reality. You'll notice that his tongue kind of sticks out longer here before pulling back in our final frame. That's a squash and stretch. We stretched the tongue out and then we squashed it back. We also did that with the ears here. They stretched up and then they squashed down back in place. It just helps everything flow and feel very smooth and natural. In animation, you want to keep everything simple. You'll notice that there isn't a design on the shirt. This is just to help save time. This particular animation took me about 2 hours, and honestly, a professional could have done it even faster. Now, like I said, I animated this using Clip Studio Paint X, but you have options. You could animate this in Procreate, you could use the Adobe suite, Adobe Animate. Toon Boom is a great professional option. There are also some free options like OpenTunes, for example, and you don't even need a program. You can get a flipbook and animate completely traditionally. You can even draw all of your frames. Open something like clipchamp, which is a totally free program, and use that to put together your frames into an animation. I hope this was helpful, and I would love to see what you guys make. 僕たちは生きるほどになくして